I woke to the sound of shattering glass, my heart pounding as if it meant to escape my chest. The room was dark, the air thick with the scent of roses. Her perfume, always her perfume. And for a moment, I thought it was only a dream. But then I saw it. The mirror above the dresser, cracked in a jagged spiderweb, reflecting a fractured version of my own face. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even left the bed. Yet there was broken, accusing me with every splintered shard. My hands trembled as I reached for the lamp, its weak glow spilling across the room, revealing nothing. No intruder, no explanation. Just a mirror and me, and the weight of 37 years pressing down like a stone. My name is Walter Grayson, and I'm 72 years old. Retired, they call it. But the truth is I've been discarded by my company, by my friends, and most of all by her. Evelyn, my wife, the woman who promised me forever, and then spent decades carving that promise into a lie. I'd known about the others. Oh, I'd known for years, but I'd buried it deep, locked it away in a box of silence. A man can convince himself of anything if he tries hard enough. But last night, something shifted. That mirror didn't break itself. And I don't believe in ghosts. Not the kind that haunt houses. Anyway, I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the cold floor biting into my bare feet. The house was silent now, save for the distant tick of the grandfather clock downstairs. Evelyn was gone, off to one of her book clubs or charity meetings, the excuses she'd fed me since the Reagan administration. I didn't need to check the garage to know her car wasn't there. She'd be back by morning, smelling of roses and someone else's aftershave, her smile as polished as ever. But this time, I wasn't going to nod and look away. This time, I had a plan. It started with a box I'd found 2 weeks ago, hidden in the attic behind a stack of old Christmas decorations. I'd been looking for my fishing tackle, something to fill the empty hours since the plant shut down. But instead, I pulled out a wooden chest, its latch rusted shut. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed and creased, penned in her elegant script. Love letters, addressed to men whose names I didn't know, but whose faces I could imagine. Each word was a dagger. Each date a confirmation of the years she'd spent laughing at me behind my back. And at the bottom, a photograph. Evelyn, radiant in a red dress, her arm around a man half my age, his eyes gleaming with a triumph I'd never known. I sat there on the attic floor, the dust settling around me, and I felt something break. Not the mirror, not yet, but something inside. All those years of swallowing her lies, of pretending I didn't see the glances, the late nights, the unexplained gifts. I'd been a fool, a coward, but no more. The mirror downstairs might have been a sign, a warning, or maybe just a coincidence. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I decided Evelyn would pay, not with shouts or accusations. She'd only twist those against me, but with something colder, something she'd never see coming. I dressed quickly, pulling on my old flannel shirt and the boots I hadn't worn since the last snow. The house creaked as I moved, its bones as tired as mine. Downstairs, I poured a cup of coffee, black and bitter, and stared at the cracked mirror's twin in the hallway. My reflection looked back, gray and worn, but my eyes, they burned. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. Revenge isn't a word I'd ever used before, but it fit now, like a glove tailored just for me. I didn't know how yet or when, but I knew why, and that was enough to start. The clock struck 3. Dawn was hours away, and Evelyn wouldn't be back until the sun was up. I had time. Time to think, to plan, to begin. I opened the drawer by the sink, the one she never touched, and pulled out a notebook. My hand steadied as I wrote the first line. She thinks she's won, but the game's just begun. I smiled, a small, tight thing, and turned the page. The coffee was cold by the time I finished filling the first page of that notebook. My handwriting, once neat and precise from years of drafting blueprints at the plant, had turned jagged, urgent. I wrote about the letters, the photograph, the way Evelyn's laugh had started to sound like a blade scraping bone. Each sentence fueled a fire in my chest, a fire I hadn't known I could still feel. But it wasn't enough to just write it down. I needed to act, to turn this simmering rage into something real. And for that, I needed to know who he was, the man in the red dress photograph. I climbed the attic stairs again, the wood groaning under my weight. The chest was still there, tucked behind a box of tinsel, its secret spilled out like guts. I sifted through the letters again, ignoring the ache in my knees, until I found the photo. There he was, smirking at me through the years, his dark hair slicked back, his arm around Evelyn like she was a prize he'd won. No name on the back, no date, just a faded Kodak stamp. But his face, I'd seen it before, hadn't I? Not in the flesh, but somewhere, nagging at the edges of my memory. I took the photo downstairs and set it on the kitchen table beside my notebook. The clock ticked on, indifferent. I needed more than a face. I needed a name, a place, something to grab onto. Evelyn was careful, but she wasn't perfect. She'd left this chest. After all, there had to be more. I started with her desk in the den, a sleek mahogany thing she'd bought with my pension money. The drawers were locked, but I'd built machines for 30 years. I knew how to break things open quietly. A paperclip and a twist of my wrist. And the first drawer slid free. Inside were bills, receipts, a few pens with chewed caps. Nothing useful. The second drawer held a planner, its leather cover embossed with her initials. I flipped it open to last month, February 2025, and scanned the entries. Book club on Tuesdays, charity on Fridays, all in her looping script. But then a name caught my eye, dinner with R, 7 p.m., the lantern. No last name, just R. It was dated 2 weeks ago, the night I'd found the chest. My gut twisted. R, could it be him? Just some quiet, I said, forcing a shrug. You know how it is. I moved past her to the kitchen, my boots heavy on the hardwood. The notebook waited under the sink, and I itched to add Rousseau's name to it. But not yet, not with her so close. I poured myself a glass of water instead, watching her reflection in the window. She sipped her wine, oblivious or pretending to be. That was her talent, wasn't it? Pretending. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to plan, to watch, to sharpen the edges of this thing I was building. I spent them carefully, keeping my routine. Coffee at dawn, the paper on the porch, tinkering in the garage, while my mind churned. Evelyn flitted in and out, her excuses piling up. A hair appointment, a friend in need, a late-night errand. I nodded, smiled, said nothing. Each lie was another brick in the wall I'd tear down. Thursday night, I sat in the garage. The truck stood up as a cover. Tools clinked against the workbench, but my hands were on the notebook. I wrote Rousseau's name in bold letters, underlined it twice. Below it, a list. Friday, the lantern late. Company. The hostess's words lingered, with company. Evelyn? Someone else? It didn't matter. He was a thread I'd pull, and I'd unravel her with it. I sketched a rough map of the restaurant from memory. Front entrance, side alley, parking lot. I'd need to see him, hear him, without being seen. A ghost in his world, just as I'd been in hers. Friday morning dawned gray and heavy, rain tapping the roof like impatient fingers. Evelyn left at noon, claiming a luncheon with her charity group. Her red dress, the one from the photo, peeked out from under her coat as she waved goodbye. My stomach twisted, but I waved back, my smile tight as wire. She'd be gone hours, maybe all night. Perfect. I packed a bag, binoculars from my fishing days, a thermos of coffee, the notebook, the photo. The truck rumbled to life at dusk, and I drove north again, the rain streaking the windshield. The lantern glowed through the haze, its windows warm and inviting. I parked a block away, under a broken street lamp, and settled in. The clock on the dash read 8:22 p.m. late. The hostess had said. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness steadying me, and watched. At 9:47, a black sedan rolled into the lot. The driver's door opened, and there he was, Rousseau, taller than I'd imagined, his gray hair slicked back, his suit crisp despite the rain. He lit a cigarette, the flame flaring briefly, and leaned against the car, waiting. My grip tightened on the binoculars. For who? Then I saw her. Not Evelyn, but a woman, young, blonde, stepping out of a taxi. She ran to him, laughing, and he pulled her close. My heart thudded. Not Evelyn. Not tonight. But this was better. Russo had secrets too. And secrets, I knew, were weapons. Rain drummed on the truck's roof as I watched Russo and the blonde disappear into the lantern. My binoculars fogged, but I'd seen enough. He wasn't waiting for Evelyn tonight. This woman was new, a wild card. I scribbled in my notebook, blonde, young, not E. Who? Russo's cigarette but smoldered in a puddle, and I wondered how many lies he juggled, how many lies he told. Like Evelyn. 2 peas in a rotten pod. I couldn't follow them inside. Not yet. Too risky. Instead, I drove to a gas station a mile away, its neon sign buzzing in the dark. The clerk, a kid with acne and a bored stare, barely glanced up as I bought a prepaid phone card. Back in the truck, I dialed directory assistance from the payphone outside, my voice low. Robert Russo, near the lantern's address. A pause, then a number and a street, Maple Drive, 10 minutes away. Jackpot. The house was a 2-story colonial, lights off, hedges trimmed to perfection. No car in the driveway. Russo was still out. I parked across the street, the rain my cover, and watched. A mailbox read Russo in gold letters. This was his world, polished and proud. But I'd found a crack. The blonde wasn't Evelyn, and that meant Russo had his own game. I smiled. I'd use it. Turn his secrets into a ruin. The night stretched on, and I planned my next move. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time I left Maple Drive, but the chill clung to me, seeping into my bones. Russo's house sat dark and smug in my rearview mirror, a castle built on secrets I'd soon dismantle. I drove home under a sky thick with clouds, the prepaid phone card tucked in my glove box, my mind racing. The blonde wasn't Evelyn, but she was a thread, maybe the one that'd lead me to the heart of this mess. I needed to know who she was, what she meant to him, and how I could bend it all to my purpose. Evelyn was asleep when I slipped inside, her snore soft and rhythmic from a bedroom. The clock read 1:13 a.m. I didn't bother with the lights, just crept to the kitchen, pulled a notebook from its hiding spot, and added, Maple Drive, blonde, not E. Next step, get closer. My handwriting shook, not from fear, but from something hotter, something alive. I stashed the notebook and climbed the stairs, pausing outside our door. Her rose perfume drifted out, mocking me. I slept in the guest room, the cot creaking under my weight, and dreamed of mirrors shattering endlessly. Saturday broke gray and quiet. Evelyn left early, another errand, and I seized a chance. I drove back to Maple Drive, parking 2 streets over this time. My cap pulled low. The neighborhood was upscale, lawns manicured, houses silent. Russo's sedan wasn't there, but delivery van idled nearby. A kid in a brown uniform hopped out, package in hand, and rang the bell. No answer. He left it on the porch. A small box, plain, no markings. I waited until he drove off, then moved. My heart thudded as I crossed the street, keeping my steps casual. The package sat there, unguarded. I glanced around, empty windows, no cameras I could see, and snatched it, tucking it under my jacket. Back in the truck, I tore it open. Inside was a velvet box, and inside that, a silver bracelet, delicate and expensive. A note fluttered out. From my darling L. R. L, not Evelyn. The blonde? My pulse quickened. Russo was playing a game, too, and I just stepped onto his board. I couldn't keep the bracelet. Too risky. But I snapped a photo with my old Polaroid, the kind Evelyn never understood. The flash flared, capturing the glint of silver and the note's curling script. Evidence. Leverage. I rewrapped the package and returned it to the porch, my hand steady now. Russo would never know I'd been there, but I knew more about him than he'd ever guess. Back home, I had the Polaroid in the garage, taped behind an old toolbox. Evelyn returned at dusk, humming, her coat dusted with rain. "Good day?" I asked, stirring soup I'd thrown together, carrots, broth, a pretense of normalcy. "Lovely," she said, shedding her coat. "And you?" "Quiet." I lied, watching her hang the red dress in the hall closet. The smoke scent lingered on her again, faint but there. Russo's cigarette? Someone else's? I didn't ask. Instead, I ate my soup in silence, the Polaroid burning in my mind. Whoever she was my edge. Russo thought he was untouchable, but I'd found his weakness. And Evelyn, she'd built her lies on sand, never dreaming I'd learn to dig. Sunday, I'd tail her, see where she went, who she met. The bracelet was a start, but I needed more. Needed to tie Russo to her, to prove the thread ran both ways. The notebook grew thicker, my plan sharper. I wasn't just Walter Grayson anymore, the retired fool. I was a shadow she'd never see coming. And Friday's return to Lantern loomed like a promise. Sunday morning, I woke before dawn, the guest room cot stiff beneath me. Evelyn's snore still echoed down the hall, but I didn't linger. I dressed in silence, dark jacket, old jeans, and grabbed my keys. Her charity meeting was at 10, she'd said. I'd be ready. The truck idled a block away as she pulled out, her red dress aflash under her coat. I followed at a distance, the streets wet with last night's rain. She didn't go to the community center. Instead, she turned north toward the city. My grip tightened on the wheel as her car wove through traffic, finally stopping at a diner off the highway, a squat, neon-lit place called the Blue Spoon. I parked across the lot, binoculars up. She stepped out, scanning the area, then went inside. Minutes later, a man joined her, tall, bald, not Russo. He wore a leather jacket and carried a briefcase. My stomach sank. Another player. Through the diner's window, I saw them huddle over coffee, her smile tight, his gestures sharp. He slid the briefcase across the table. She opened it briefly, then snapped it shut. Money? Papers? I couldn't tell. They left separately, her heading home, him peeling off in a gray sedan. I scribbled in my notebook, Blue Spoon, bald man, briefcase. Russo wasn't the only thread now. Evelyn's web was bigger than I'd thought, and I just glimpsed its edges. I didn't follow the bald man, too risky with daylight burning, but Evelyn stopped at the Blue Spoon, gnawed at me. Back home, she acted normal, chatting about her meeting while I nodded over a sandwich. Her lies were seamless, but the briefcase lingered in my mind. What was she trading? I needed to know. That night, while she showered, I slipped into the bedroom. Her purse sat on the dresser, unzipped. Inside, a receipt fluttered out. The Blue Spoon, 10:42 a.m., $12.50. 2 coffees, nothing else. No clues about the case. I checked the closet next. The red dress hung there, smoke-scented, but its pockets were empty. Then I saw it, her coat crumpled on the floor. In the lining, a hidden slit. My fingers brushed paper, a folded note. Next drop Wednesday, 8 p.m., usual spot. T. Not Russo's R, not the blonde's L. Another name, another thread. My heart raced. Wednesday was 2 days away. I memorized the note, tucked it back, and retreated to the garage. The notebook grew heavy with questions. Bald man equals T? Briefcase contents? Usual spot. Evelyn wasn't just cheating. She was running something. Money, maybe secrets. Russo was part of it, but not all. I taped the Polaroid of the bracelet beside T's note in my mind. The web tightened, and I'd be there Wednesday, unseen, to catch her in it. Revenge wasn't just personal now. It was a reckoning. Tuesday dragged like a dull blade. Every tick of the clock a reminder of what was coming. Evelyn flitted around the house, her cheerfulness a mask I could have peeled off with my bare hands. She didn't suspect a thing. Not the notebook under the sink, not the Polaroid in the garage, not the fire I'd stoked since that mirror cracked. Wednesday loomed, and I was ready. The note said 8 p.m., usual spot. I didn't know where that was, but I'd follow her to it, shadow her like she'd shadowed my life with lies. She left at 7:15, claiming a friend's birthday drinks. That red dress again, her coat slung over her arm. I waited 5 minutes, then took the truck, keeping my lights off until I hit the main road. Her car weaved through town, past the diner, past the Lantern, until she turned down a gravel lane I'd never seen, a narrow cut between warehouses, the kind of place that swallowed sound. I parked at the edge, grabbed my binoculars, and crept closer on foot, the gravel crunching under my boots. A single street lamp buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow. Evelyn stood by her car, the briefcase in hand, her back to me. Then headlights flared. A gray sedan rolled up, the same one from the Blue Spoon. The bald man, T, I assumed, stepped out, his leather jacket gleaming with rain. They didn't waste time. She handed over the case. He passed her an envelope. Words were sharp, clipped, "I caught next week," and double it through the wind. He drove off, and she lingered, counting whatever was in that envelope. Cash, thick stacks of it. I ducked behind a rusted dumpster, my breath shallow. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a hustle, a deal. Russo, the blonde, now T, they were pieces of something bigger. My mind spun. Was she paying them? Were they paying her? I snapped a photo with the Polaroid, the flash muffled by my jacket. Her head jerked up, eyes narrowing, but I was already melting into the shadows. She climbed into her car and sped off, leaving me with a hum of the lamp and a plan snapping into focus. Back home, I taped the new Polaroid beside the bracelet shot. The notebook bulged. Wednesday, 8 p.m., Warehouse Lane. T, cash envelope. Briefcase gone. I paced the garage, the pieces clicking. Russo was her lover, sure, but T was business. Maybe blackmail, maybe a racket. The blonde? A distraction or another player. I didn't care about justice anymore. Just ruin. Hers. I'd expose her, not with shouts or fists, but with evidence cold and undeniable. Friday at the Lantern was my next chance. Russo would be there, and I confront him, use what I knew to crack him open. Thursday, I watched her closer. She was jittery, checking her phone, her smile thinner. The envelope was hidden somewhere. I'd searched the bedroom, the den, found nothing. She knew something was off, but not me, not yet. I sharpened my tools, the photos, the prepaid phone card, a tape recorder from my plant days. I tested it, whispering, "She thinks she's safe. She's wrong." The hiss of the tape was my heartbeat. Friday morning, I fueled the truck, my hand steady. Evelyn left early, her excuses a blur. I didn't care. Tonight, I'd face Russo, show him the bracelet photo, demand answers. If he was part of her game, he'd talk, or he'd break. Either way, I'd have what I needed to bury her. The mirror's crack echoed in my mind. A starting gun. The end was close, and it was mine to write. Friday night descended cold and clear, the stars sharp as knives above the lantern. I parked in the same shadowed spot, my truck blending into the dark. The bag sat beside me, notebook, Polaroid recorder, the prepaid phone card. Russo sedan rolled in at 9:52, alone this time, no blonde in sight. He lit a cigarette, the flare illuminating his smug face, and strode inside. I waited 10 minutes, then followed, my cap low, my heart a steady drum. The restaurant hummed with chatter, jazz weaving through the air. Russo sat at a corner table, sipping wine, his back to the wall. I took a seat at the bar, close enough to watch, far enough to blend. The bartender slid me a coffee I didn't drink. I rehearsed it in my head, show him the bracelet photo, press him about Evelyn, record every word. He'd squirm, deny, then crack. I'd make sure of it. At 10:30, he stood, heading for the restroom. My chance. I followed, the recorder on in my pocket. The hall was dim, the door creaking as I stepped in. He was at the sink, washing his hands, and froze when he saw me. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice smooth, edged with irritation. "Robert Russo." I said, pulling the Polaroid from my wallet. "This yours." The bracelet gleamed in the photo, the note from my darling L, clear as day. His eyes narrowed, then widened. "Where'd you get that?" he snapped, stepping closer. I held my ground. "Doesn't matter. What matters is Evelyn. My wife. You know her." He laughed, short and harsh. "Evelyn Grayson? Yeah, I know her, but not how you think." He leaned in, his breath sour with wine. "She's not my lover, old man. She's my boss." I blinked, the recorder humming. "Boss!" 10 years, he said, smirking. She runs the show, drops cash, favors. I'm just the middleman. That bracelet? For my wife, Lila. Evelyn paid me to keep her happy, keep her quiet. You're not the only one she's played. My chest tightened. Not lovers, partners. The letters, the photo, her red dress. They were props, a cover. The bald man, the briefcase. It was her empire, not his. I'd built my revenge on sand. Proof. I croaked, shoving the recorder forward. He shrugged. Ask for yourself. She's here tonight. He nodded toward the dining room. Table by the window. I stumbled out, dazed, and there she was, Evelyn, in that red dress, laughing with a man I didn't know. Not Russo, not T. Another cog in her machine. The room spun. I'd planned to ruin her, but she'd been steps ahead. Always. Then I saw it. The cracked mirror from home, mounted on the wall behind her, reflecting her smile. Impossible. A taunt. I drove home, numb. The house was dark, but the attic chest was gone. In its place, a note in her script. You're free now, Walt. Enjoy it. She'd known every move, every thought. The mirror hadn't broken by chance. She'd staged it, pushed me to dig, to chase ghosts. She let me think I'd won, then vanished with her empire intact. I sank to the floor, the notebook useless in my hands. Revenge hadn't been mine, it had been hers. She'd freed herself, left me broken in a house of shadows. The mirror downstairs gleamed whole, uncracked, and my reflection stared back, alone.